Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Spa-Francorchamps, the second of three races this weekend for the Radical Challenge. It's Ben Evans and Alex Mortimer with you in our commentary greenhouse overlooking the start and finish stretch here as the cars are on the grid and about ready to go for this second 60-minute race of the weekend. The weather has been somewhat unpredictable this morning. It is still very warm, but we had very, very heavy rainfall about an hour ago, which is just about burnt off, which is going to make this a little bit of a voyage into the unknown for our pole sitter, John Harrison, who didn't even get to race yesterday after an early retirement for Colin Noble. He shares the front row of the grid with Jeremy Ferguson. So, again, we've got the Masters class cars for the SR8s. We have got the Super Sport class SR3s, which are racing for points in the Radical Challenge this weekend. So a lot of races within a single race to watch for, Alex.
Absolutely, absolutely. The V8's a lot more horsepower than the SR3s. SR3s much more, far more of those on the grid. I think 28 SR3s. So it will be a race of two halves. The V8's much quicker in a straight line. The SR3s with the advantage mid corner.
So we are starting this race behind the safety car. So I think as they ease on their way now, indeed that's the case. The race clock now starts to tick down. So they're going to be getting an extra lap around this circuit just to see how the conditions have changed before they get released. But as we alluded to, the ambient temperature is so warm that it's hard to believe 45 minutes ago the track was completely flooded and we've already got a near dry line.
Absolutely. We sat in a briefing just over an hour ago with the clerks saying that this would be started under the safety car through fears of lying water down the Kemmel Straight. So and now the guys have had to make a difficult decision. Do I take slicks? Do I take wets? It's still damp patches, but overall I believe everyone will have gone for slicks looking at the circuit. But this is going to be quite an exciting start for them. They'll really need to concentrate hard on making sure they can generate the tyre temperature.
And that's Jim Booth, unfortunately, who is stuck on the grid. He should be able to get on his way, and when he does, he'll just catch up to the tail of this train. Now, the challenge here is going to be for the drivers to find that sweet spot in these damp conditions where the aerodynamic and mechanical grip is going to start to work for them.
Absolutely. This is going to be a difficult one because some of the guys will have gambled on a wet setup. You know, do I run a dry setup with wet tyres? Shall I go with quite a dry setup with slick tyres? So there will be a big spread on this grid. Right now, ultimately, it will be about just make sure you stay off the curbs, stay off the AstroTurf for any retained water on those, and just concentrate on building brake and tyre temperature and get ready for the start of the race.
Yeah, I should explain that even though as the track dries out, the AstroTurf and the curbs retain the water and the dampness that little bit longer, and it's not uncommon in these races on drying tracks to see a car spinning when they just put a tyre ever so slightly on a painted line and away they go. So the field currently out at Les Combes, having had a long climb up the Kemmel Straight. That's one of the better overtaking points on the track, and yesterday we were treated to an absolutely brilliant fight for the win between James Robinson, who actually took the victory, and Jack Lang, who pretty much tried every single trick in the book to get there, but he couldn't quite do it, eventually making a small mistake at Poulon late on.
Yeah, no, it was a good race from James and Jack. It really was a masterclass in racecraft from Robinson, holding Lang off, who was the quicker car at the end.
Got John Harrison, who is leading the field round from Jeremy Ferguson, then Philippe Payot, and it's Ivan Lukasevich in the first of the Super Sport class cars. And Lukasevich, the Russian, who came into the Radical European Masters midway through last season and has immediately been absolutely breathtakingly fast. And yesterday he got delayed in the pits, but then absolutely surged through the field. So he's going to be one to watch.
Yeah, he really will be. And looking at the guys now, you can see there is still some damp parts of the circuit. So I'm looking at the guys inducing a bit of understeer, trying to generate some front tyre temperature. This will definitely play into the hands of the more experienced guys like Ivan, who've got a bit more racecraft under their belts. I think that should see them in a good place. Charging hard at the start of this race. So. Again, like yesterday, I think the SR8s at the front will be the governing factor for the SR3s. The SR8s could be a bit more of a handful in this sort of condition. Slick tyres with damp patches and that extra horsepower.
Well, a car to watch for in the wet is going to be the white number 25 car, Dragos Dimitrescu, who does most of his racing in the Middle East, and therefore the unpredictable weather of the Ardennes is maybe something of a voyage into the unknown for him in terms of how the car is going to perform in wet conditions.
Absolutely, this is a new one for Dragos. So I know, speaking to him this morning, he'd never driven in the wet before. There was some anxiety to know what it was like. Doesn't look like he's going to get that experience this morning, but maybe in this afternoon's race he will.
Don't curse it. It's going to be sunny all day long. Although the weather forecast might have a differing opinion, but we will see. At one point it was forecast we're going to have thunderstorms all day, and that looks a little bit less likely than it did. So whether or not the safety car is going to come in at the end of this lap, we will see. Jim Booth, I'm pleased to report, is on his way again, and he's got a little bit of a job to do to catch up to the tail of the field, but if we go for a second lap behind the safety car before we do go green, then I think that's entirely possible, and that's exactly what's going to happen. As the Volvo leads them through the bus stop chicane into the pit lane there for Jeremy Ferguson. I just wonder if Jeremy went out on wets.
Yeah, that says to me that he started on wet tyres, has seen the circuit, knows it's not the right call right now, and he's dashing up the pit lane. Not going to be a bad thing for him. Whilst he's going to lose a lot of track position, I think because they're going for another lap and a few cars looking like they're coming in now. So I think this won't hurt them that badly. The safety cars on the circuit, they will lose that track position, but they will be able to join back up once the tyres are done.
Yeah, Elliot Goodman was the other one who, it appeared, had dashed into the pits. And it's always a little bit of a gamble as the team get to work fitting the slicks, because had it just been the single lap behind the safety car, then there might have been a case to say you could get 2 or 3 good laps out of the wets, build up a really formidable advantage, and then pit in. But as the track continues to dry lap on lap, then that's no longer possible.
No, and looking at that there, you can see quite a clear dry line into Eau Rouge, but still a little bit damp on the way up Eau Rouge. And from a driving perspective, one thing that this will bring is you can be on slick tyres and on the line, and that's absolutely fine. If you move off the line, it could still be entertaining to pass. So it's going to be interesting to see how this unfolds. A lot of tricky conditions for these guys to deal with.
And the other element is that patience needs to be something of a virtue, because I remember from my very inglorious career in Formula Ford cars that when it was damp and drying like this, but it was nice and sunny, you thought you could drive as if it were a completely bone-dry track, and then you found out very quickly it was a good way to meet the marshals on the far side of the circuit.
Absolutely. It's these guys have to remember they've got 1 hour ahead of them. It really isn't where you are on the first lap, it's where you are at the end. So discretion is often the better part of valour with these races, and just a couple of cautious laps at the start to make sure you've got tyre temperature really will help them.
Well, the safety car is coming in at the end of this lap, but by the time that they get back around, we'll have essentially had 10 minutes of the race behind the safety car, which then puts a slight element of strategy into play as well. Now, there is James Robinson at the back of the field. Now, if I understand this correctly, it's because his nominated co-driver for the weekend, Jack Manchester, who's also at the Nürburgring, couldn't qualify the car yesterday.
Yes, that's my understanding. So looking at the helmet, I think that's Jack in the car right now. So he sits a little bit taller than James. So he's going to be on the back row. Obviously on the back foot in terms of circuit time this weekend, having been at the Nürburgring. But Jack is a fast guy, a lot of speed last year. A good campaign out at Barbados in that series over the winter. Look for a lot of progress from that car as he finds his legs here today. Yeah,
so this very much a chance to learn which way around the circuit goes. There is the aforementioned Dragos Dumitrescu. As the field now beginning to bunch themselves up, waiting for John Harrison to pull the pin and get underway. Harrison will hand over mid-race to the very rapid Colin Noble Jr. And depending on the progress of Jim Booth, it'll be interesting to see Colin Noble and Ryan Booth doing battle late on, possibly for the outright race victory.
Noticeably, I saw Jeremy Ferguson head out a few seconds ago, so he will make it back to the back of the chain for the start of the race. So it's not been too compromised. He's got a lot of SR3s to get by, but he will start on the right tyre, so he'll be happy. Steve
Burgess, perennially successful in the Radical Challenge, as he starts this one in 6th place, just behind yesterday's runner-up Jack Lang. There is Lang, the bright orange car. They have got Shaheen Nouri behind them, and then Dominic Jackson. These are all drivers we would look to see challenging. Christian Jeffrey, unfortunately, we didn't see masses of yesterday because he had a coming together with Spencer Bourne at Les Combes, but was pretty quick until that point. So lots of potential podium finishers. As the lights are out on the safety car, it's John Harrison's responsibility to pace the field. But he's only really going to have the chance to pull the pin now as they come out of the bus stop chicane and see whether or not Philippe Payot stays with him. As away we go, the green flags go out, and Harrison may be a little bit slow to respond, so the field all bunched up behind, and it means that Oliver Barker looking to challenge Ivan Lukasevich. They're 4 wide. Oh, and that's why John Harrison possibly just struggling on the brakes, so this is going to be very congested into La Source for the first time. Oh, a little bit of bumping behind, but fortunately nobody going around.
Yeah, very congested at the first corner there. It looks like Ivan is really on a charge. So he's got an SR3 making a very bold move up through in No Rouge there past him.
I think that was Dominic Jackson. So it is Jack Lang who seems to have the advantage over Steve Burgess, and then Dominic Jackson just in behind as Philippe Payot has lost a little bit of ground. The SR8s maybe being a bit more tentative on the brakes, given the requirement for an educated right foot in these conditions.
Absolutely. And looking at it now, we've got a good break from these guys at the front. Jack Lang off. It'll be interesting to see how Ivan deals with this. You know, he was extremely fast in qualifying, so let's see how he reacts to this.
Well, they're all cleanly through Les Combes. Also going well in the early stages is Brian Caldwell. He's tucked up behind Philippe Payot in another of the Masters class cars. That's interesting, through Bruxelles, almost a completely clear dry line. But it's as they get down through Pouhon and then in towards Fagnes where it starts to get a little bit trickier. Christian Jeffrey out over the curbs. Mark Richards hoping to avoid doing the same sort of thing, as offline into Pouhon there was Steve Burgess. As a challenge to Christian Jeffrey, it's Jason Redding. And eventually, Jason has, because it's exactly what you were saying earlier on, Alex. You go offline, it's still damp there, and you just can't get the traction for the move.
Absolutely. It really is quite difficult for these guys now. The dry line will be the only place where the car feels secure. Still, looking down at this part of the circuit, a bit more traction. So Ivan making a good move there on Burgess. You know, Steve just needs to get his head down and chase now at this point. No, fighting back through Stavelot. So.
Yeah, about it being wet and difficult to run side by side. Clearly, nobody told Steve Burgess.
Yeah, that was certainly quite bold. So, but you can see that the dry and the damp track there. So, yeah, choosing to let him go, I think, and now he's got Barker to worry about. Barker tucked right up underneath him. We'll be looking into the bus stop.
So what it means is that Jack Lang and Dominic Jackson have broken away first and second. We're watching the fight for third, headed by the white car of Ivan Lukasevich. Then it's the blue and yellow car of Steve Burgess, the blue and white car of Oliver Barker. And then John Harrison, the Masters class leader, in 6th place, just a little bit adrift out of the bus stop chicane. And even though Barker put a wheel over at the curb, it didn't appear to be particularly slippery. It's certainly slippery offline on the way into La Source. Barker realises that and decides not to launch to the inside line.
Yeah, Barker definitely looking anxious to make some progress here. He can see Lang at the front, and he won't want to lose too much ground because it will be hard to claw that back.
Drive-through penalty for Mark Schrader, car 20 for the team working on the car at the 1 minute board going out as Lukasevich builds up the pace. No shortage of commitment now to Radion. He's got a run here on Dominic Jackson along the Kemmel Straight. Jackson puts the car into the middle of the road. Can barely see Lukasevich behind him.
He's started out. Let's see how much of a fight Jackson puts up here. No, I think a lot of the overlap was there before the braking zone, so he's trying to tough it out.
Yeah, that was maybe less advisable for Dominic Jackson, because it now thrusts him immediately into the clutches of Steve Burgess, and Burgess might just have a run down here towards Bruxelles. It's going to be tight, very tight. But
these guys are teammates as well, and now it's opened the door for Barker. Barker going straight up the inside, opportunistic and well done there, very good.
And that was nicely judged by Oliver Barker, frustrating for Dominic Jackson. And now already Lukasevich chasing down Jack Lang. So the Russian driver really putting in the effort at the moment as he tries to close up to the race leader. Battles further down the field, and that is the progress of Jeremy Ferguson. He's just cleared Gary Patterson and Rod Goodman, having switched to slicks. to target David Frankland.
Absolutely, he's just going to be having to get his head down, drive some nice clean laps. He knows he was compromised in terms of starting position, but they have the Ferguson brothers will have the pace to work their way through. But a lot of ground to make up now to the lead SR8 there that we're seeing going through Stavelot.
So that's the battle actually for the lead, the SR8 class, between John Harrison and Philippe Payot. Here's the battle for the lead of the race overall, because Ivan Lukasevich really closing up onto terms with Jack Lang. But part of this as well for Lukasevich is he hands over to Konstantin Gudkayev mid-race. Jack Lang will do the full 60 minutes single-handedly, and Gudkayev maybe not quite as rapid as Lukasevich. So there is a real incentive here, if he can find a way past Jack Lang, for Lukasevich to make the move.
Yeah, definitely. He's in the toe now. Looking at his exhaust, I'm trying to see if that's sitting low on the left-hand side. Looks quite low, but let's hope there's no issues there. Lights are on, and he's got Lang in his sights now. We're looking for an excellent exit from here. Good run through Eau Rouge, and I think a move into Le Combe.
Round La Source they go. Just Oliver Barker fighting the wheel a little bit. Now, where's Dominic Jackson? He's been demoted by John Harrison, so Harrison really getting up to speed as well, as Lukasevich was breathtakingly quick through Eau Rouge last time around. Same for Barker on Burgess. They might get swamped by Harrison on the run down the Kemmel Straight. We wait for them to burst into view. Here they come then, and Lukasevich right out towards the grass. Jack Lang forcing the Russian to the outside line, but I'm not sure there's masses that Lang can do. There isn't. He has to slot in behind Lukasevich as Harrison looks to make the move for third, and he should pull that off on the way into Les Combes.
Yeah, looking at the speed trap, it looks like Jack might have had a bad exit from Eau Rouge, only going through that 216k versus the 227 of Ivan. So good speed from Ivan. He'll just want to get his head down now, build every part of this lead he can, ready to hand over to Constantine. So expect to see him run long into the pit window and build all the margin he can.
Yeah, just the 216 kilometres per hour, which is a lot quicker than you'll ever have gone on the roads legally, of course.
Yeah, it certainly feels fast when you think that's on the exit of a corner like Eau Rouge, but let's see how they get on now. And John Harrison really with a bit between his teeth and chasing these guys down. You see lights on there. He's obviously confident with where the circuit is, with where his tyres are. Car's starting to feel good, and you're going to see him start forcing his way through.
Philippe Payot as well in sixth, closing up onto the battle between Burgess and Barker. Payot, another of the Masters class runners in the SR8, and therefore will fancy his chances on the straight, probably coming out to Stavelot towards Blanchimont to move clear of the dueling SR3s ahead of him. Trying to chase up to John Harrison. Harrison, meanwhile, off him shooter Jack Lang and Lukasevich. Now for Philippe Payot, the gap that was there was closed because Barker was trying to make the move on Steve Burgess, and therefore, for all that the Swiss might have a straight line speed advantage running in the SR8, the SR3's in front, side by side. There's not a whole heap he can do.
No, very difficult now. So he'll have the chance to blast past in a straight line now, but we're going to see the different dynamic between the 3 and the 8 start kicking into play. So the 8 certainly extremely fast. You see him just pull out. He'll be able to drive by. Will Burgess have seen him as he starts to move over?
No.
Well spotted, Steve. A quick dart at the end there, but you will see again the V8. Oof. Contact there definitely between Barker and the V8 on the exit of the
It was just a gentle friendly tap, nothing more than that, as Jeremy Ferguson slides past John Caldwell, and now Philippe Payot has passed Burgess and Barker and should be able to streak clear through this section of track along the Kemmel Straight. This is where Payot can stretch his legs. Burgess optimistically getting into the toe, as will Barker. Meanwhile, change for second. John Harrison rockets past Jack Lang. Don't forget, those cars are in separate classes, so for Lang, he's still second in the Supersport class, still, therefore, second in the points for the Radical Challenge competitors.
Absolutely, and Payot will have his eyes set on Harrison. Oh, again, an optimistic move there by Barker. Just a little bit of inexperience. That corner's very difficult to make a pass on, and you can see he's given away half a second or so. Again, as yesterday, looks like he's got great speed. Just needs to make sure when he looks for those moves, they're in places where he can make nice, clean passes.
And for many of these drivers, this will be their first time racing at Spa. There's just something about the consistency and concentration that you need around a circuit like this, because you have to treat it with respect or it will bite. Barker found that out yesterday. Absolutely,
and that's it, especially with a car like an SR3. You know, you don't have a huge amount of horsepower, and you must keep the wheel speed, the momentum up. see Barker carrying fantastic speed into the fan chicane there. Really lovely line, nice direction change. Definitely a gain on Burgess there. So these two are going to continue to duke it out, I think. But again, Barker's next best chance, get a good exit from here, a good run through Stabilo 2, and just tuck up and hopefully get the draft and have a look into the bus stop.
Amazingly, you're almost at 1/3 race distance already. As this is the fight for third in the Super Sport class. Barker and Burgess been inseparable throughout the course of the race. Steve Burgess using all of his experience to drive a very wide car, but Oliver Barker
right under his gearbox. Burgess going defensive. Does he know he's there? Yeah, it looks like they're giving each other space at the moment. Again, hard move around the outside if Barker's going to try it.
But really nicely defended by Steve Burgess. He's just doing it the subtle way. He's just forcing Oliver Barker to have his car where he doesn't want it to be.
Exactly. You know, very, very sensible sort of stuff. Not coming fully across the circuit, just showing that he knows he's there, and he's going to make him work for it.
So that last lap for Steve Burgess was pretty much identical in terms of pace to Jack Lang ahead of him, which shows that Burgess is barely conceding any time at all in his defence from Oliver Barker. Philippe Payot, meanwhile, goes third in the race overall. Eases past Jack Lang as here comes John Harrison in pursuit of Ivan Lukasevich. I'm sure Harrison's going to be quite close enough this time into Les Combes. No, he's not. What about the battle behind? They're side by side. Oh, that was close.
Very close, very close. Looks like, but no, Burgess thinking better of it. You know, now, really importantly, this doesn't lose ground to the cars in front. So they need to be thinking about Ivan and Lang in front and just chasing. Barker's got his head down now. Burgess just needs to go with him and pull himself back up to the lead two cars.
So around the Bruxelles hairpin, and Barker, it's seemed for a couple of laps as if he was likely, if he got past Steve Burgess, to pull away from him.
Absolutely, yeah. It looks like he's put a good few car lengths into him quite quickly. So Barker clearly with excellent speed again, turning in with a lot of speed there to Pouan, where we saw him have his excursion yesterday. Be interesting to see what headway he can make into Jack Lang on this middle sector. Certainly in the first sector he had 8/10 away from Lang. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, admittedly Lang did lose a bit of time, I think, to Philippe Payot. Another drive-through penalty for Mark Crader. It's not his day. He's already had one. He's now got one for not obeying the track limits and gaining position. Yeah,
that's a real shame. He had a great start to his race yesterday and got stuck in the pit lane when one of the SR8s couldn't quite clear fully into the pit lane and blocked the alley. So shame for Mark, but let's hope he has a better one this afternoon.
Yeah. Any more indiscretions, I expect Brian Poulter, the race director, will be confiscating his passport, or at least cancelling his Eurotunnel ticket. So, or indeed booking him onto British Airways to get home today. As coming out of the bus stop chicane on towards La Source. This is the fight to lead the race between Ivan Lukasevich and John Harrison. We've got Philippe Payot in third, the second Masters class round behind Harrison. Now, that last sector for Oliver Barker was a 38.5. Jack Lang a 39.0.
Yeah, so Barker really with pace at the moment. Last lap of 2:27.2. That plays Ivan's lap of a 26.5, so not quite as quick as him, but definitely with more speed than Lang right now. So it looks like we will get to see a battle between those two as they come together.
Change for the lead, meanwhile, not unsurprisingly, John Harrison has blasted his way past Ivan Lukasevich, who remains the Supersport class leader comfortably, but third place for Philippe Payot, and it's going to be the fight for second in the Supersport class that's worth watching. Oliver Barker 6/10 quicker than Jack Lang through the first sector. Just suggests that Lang is possibly running quite a lot more rear wing on his car and has maybe got more of a wet setup.
Absolutely. It doesn't. I mean, the first sector at Spa is La Source and Eau Rouge. Eau Rouge in this condition now will be, whilst never a straight line, it is flat out. Won't be too difficult for those guys to go through that. So to lose that sort of time makes you think he has got a much more conservative setup on the car.
We've got another drive-through penalty, and it is for Dragos Dimitrescu, unfortunately, who has also taken liberal interpretation to the track limits and gaining a position.
So no, he didn't get his wet race, but it looks like he's having fun out there anyway.
Certainly having fun, as Lukasevich trying to come back at Harrison. But Harrison, by retaining the lead through this middle sector, will now be able to rebuild it as they come out of Stavelot towards Bonchimont. We're not that far away either from the pit lane open boards going out to the drivers, and therefore the element of strategy kicking into play. Now here is Jim Booth, who has just moved past Mark Crader. Crader, the man who is certainly winner of the Naughty Step Trophy for the early phases of the race, but still going strongly in 24th. Jim Booth, one of the SR8s, past him and on his way.
Yeah, it really is going to be interesting to see when Jim gets hands over to Ryan, his son, how they get on and what progress Ryan can make. You see, that was a great illustration there of the speed of an SR3 through Eau Rouge. So Jim having to now defend to Mark, but the straight line speed will definitely help him.
Now that was interesting there. Joe Watt and Lee Bailey right onto the damp section of the circuit, suggesting that they're possibly on wet tyres, which I can imagine is currently a whole heap of no fun at all.
Yeah, no, I think that may well be a good spot of yours. Yeah, Jim Booth looking like he's definitely on a wet tyre, really starting to struggle. Mark Crader looking to make a move. It's a tricky one for both these guys, but ultimately the V8 will become a sitting duck. It will only get worse.
And it's probably worth explaining what happens, because when you're on a wet tyre, the tread starts to move around and you just get no feel for what the car's doing because it's all moving on the tyre.
Yeah, absolutely. The block moves and the car feels like you're on oil. You know, only a millimetre of block movement can make the car feel like it's slewing a foot to the left and right. So it's quite an uncomfortable feeling, and ultimately you get no purchase on the track. The compound really starts to let go, and it doesn't give the adhesion you want.
And the real kicker as well for those on the wet tyres is they do change at the pit stop. Only 2 people are allowed to work on the car at any given time, so in motor racing terms it's going to be quite a lengthy pit stop. Compared to your local quick fit, it's going to be very, very quick.
Absolutely. You know, when you see some of the GT3 teams, you know, with the right equipment and a number of people, they can change 4 tyres in 15 to 20 seconds. For these guys, they're not set up for it. It's not part of the regulations, so think closer to a minute. So not an easy thing if you have to do a tyre change.
Philippe Payot now clear of Ivan Lukasevich as well, up into second place. The battle that's worth keeping on is the one between Jack Lang and Oliver Barker, because Oliver now just 1.3 seconds back from the number 2 car of Jack Lang in the fight for 4th and 5th. They've got Steve Burgess behind in 6th. Then a big gap back to Brian Caldwell, who's going strongly in 7th. Shaheen Nouri in 8th. Jeremy Ferguson flying in 9th in the Masters class car. It's just done the fastest first sector of anybody in the race so far.
And interestingly, on the last lap, Payot and Harrison both setting their fastest laps, both 2:24s, but Payot's a tenth faster. So those guys are having a good scrap. Payot hasn't given up on getting back to Harrison, but it looks like Harrison might be exploiting a bit more of the downforce from that new shaped car. That's
Shaheen Nouri into La Source. Very tight with Brian Caldwell, but Caldwell making the move stick.
Yeah, just missing Caldwell there. Those guys look like they're having a good fight. So it'd be interesting to see how that develops. Both experienced radical campaigners. So Shaheen coming back from the Lamborghini Super Trofeo last year to race in the radicals. So he's looks like he's having fun.
Yeah, Shaheen, like so many of the drivers in this field, absolutely fascinating lives away from the track, and some of the business interests that they're involved in. As now John Harrison just picking his way past Lee Bailey, and this is an illustration as well, actually, of over a circuit with such long straights, that the differential as the race plays out between the SR8s and the SR3s.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know he'll have the sister V8, albeit run by Ballard Performance, coming up in his sights now. He can see it in front of Mark Crader. Mark Crader looking like he's having a pretty challenging race with Jim there. So Jim on the wet tyre and Mark on a slick. So probably a little bit frustrating for them both. Let's. So
there's Dominic Jackson in the pits now.
They're taking wheel clips out. The wheels are coming off. That explains Jackson's early pace, but lack of it since just must have been on the wet tyre.
It's always such a difficult call to make, particularly as the weather forecast has been so changeable. And now in the traffic, Philippe Payot challenging John Harrison for lead of the race. A potential pass for the lead, but Harrison just about able to box out the Swiss driver. They're tucked up behind Jim Booth, so this is going to be interesting because Jim is going to be able to match Harrison pretty much stride for stride on the run towards Blanchimont, and it opens the door for Payot, who draws alongside, but he's now bottled up behind Jim Booth as Harrison looks to challenge the outside. Payot tries to follow through. They both sweep around Jim Booth, but this is still not done and dusted yet. Harrison's going to have to try and find a way past Joe Watt as well, which he does, but it opens the opportunity to Payot to maybe challenge into the bus stop chicane. The Monza Garage run driver looks the inside of John Harrison, but Harrison able to withstand the pressure.
Yeah, really good stuff there from the guys. A lot of respect as they went through Blanchimont, 165 miles an hour, 3 V8s all side by side, but Jim Booth really respectful of them, giving them space.
It's one of the and a look from Payot getting to La Source. It's one of the lovely things about the Radical Challenge is you never see the malicious incidents you get in other categories. Everybody gives each other fair racing, and there's a lot of respect amongst the drivers.
Absolutely, these guys are professionals from the business world often, and they're here ultimately for their own enjoyment.
It's Christian Jeffrey into the pits, and looks like a new set of boots for him. Aaron and Lee Bailey also switching places, also looking like they're going to switch tyres.
Yeah, it's going to be a hive of activity down in the pits, but these guys are tucked up close together again. So Payot's done well, drawn himself back to Harrison. You know, this is an interesting fight. Harrison a bit too fast into Lecombe there, out of position. So you've got two generations of SR8 here. The Payot in the older car, Harrison in the brand new shape, 2017 SR8. A lot more aggressive front end, a lot more aero. So hopefully he should be able to use that to gain the upper hand.
Yeah, interesting to see that Philippe Payot has got all of the wing planes on the car, and it's just about giving the equivalent front end downforce as John Harrison with the new nose to the car, which looks absolutely fantastic, albeit you wouldn't want to meet it on a dark night in a quiet alley.
Certainly a much more aggressive look to the new car, and but Payot mounting on the pressure, really looking if Harrison makes anything of a slip up, he's going to be there ready for it.
So the Swiss on the roll as he tries to prize away past John Harrison now. Wonder if Harrison may come in at the end of this lap to hand over to Colin Noble. Yeah,
strategically, I think Noble will be the faster of the two. They're at the halfway point at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see what the team elect to do.
But it's too much fun, isn't it, for John Harrison? You don't necessarily want to pit in out of a wheel-to-wheel scrap for the lead at Spa.
Exactly, and John is doing a good job. I mean, he's leading the race and holding off Payot. I think there's every reason why he may continue, but let's see what happens. See if he peels in this time. Into
the bus stop chicane, and if he darts right, it means he's heading to the pits, and that's exactly what happens.
There we go. You called that correctly. So he's attacking that pit entrance. Needs to make sure he doesn't lose any time here because it would be very easy to be leapfrogged in the pits.
And it will be Jacques Villard who takes over from Philippe Payot, and Philippe maybe just got the legs on Jack in terms of pace.
This is a really critical lap for Payot though. If he can go really well in these first couple of sectors, put his best lap in the race, it will give him the time to allow his teammate to jump in front of Noble.
And the other element to keep an eye on is the progress of Jeremy Ferguson, who I think is fully vindicated in his decision to change tyres after that first safety car lap.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. Payot, yep, setting his best first sector speed trap there, just under 260 kilometres an hour on the exit of Eau Rouge. So really flying now. So he knows the importance of this lap. So let's see what he does. Andrew
and Jeremy Ferguson having maybe a slightly less than ideal pit stop as Payot presses on his way. Lukasiewicz still clear of Jack Lang at the head of the Super Sport class, and that's mainly because I think other rivals have all taken the opportunity to peel into the pits. Certainly into the pits has already been Oliver Barker, and he's shuffled down to 9th. Steve Burgess, Shaheen Nouri also ducking in, so that's going to promote Mark Richards. Looking good. I mean, he is still attacking. This looks really nice. So you'll have Christian Jeffrey popping up on his radar there. Gives him someone to chase on this in lap. Really starting to use a bit more circuit now. You can see using some exit curb there in Stavelot, attacking Stavelot too.
possible in qualifying to do that flat out, having to have a lift in the race with all the extra fuel and obviously tyre wear now being a factor. So, you know, the SR8 really does sound glorious, though, as you hear it come by.
Certainly does. He's just about to close onto the tail of Christian Jeffrey as he comes out of Blanchimont. Now, I think he's going to have to... He might squeeze one more lap out of it, actually, Philippe Payot, if he fancies.
Interesting to see if he did. I saw him waving at the pits as he came by last time. Interesting to see if he darts in. Yeah, there he goes, darts in. Good reactions by Jeffrey not to touch the back of his car. So let's see how this works out. If they can have a clean driver change, it looked like a really good in-lap for Payot. Set his best middle sector. So he'll be hoping that gives them the ability to leapfrog the Noble Harrison car.
Just need to look for the sector times of Colin Noble as and when they appear. And the middle sector is going to be the one to watch. A 66.4 was Philippe Payot's middle sector as Jacques Viard readies himself to jump in. Now, obviously, the driver can't be in contact with the car when the fuel's going into it. It's got the two suited and booted mechanics working on it.
Absolutely. Steering wheel off again. That's always a brave decision. Noble back out in the car now, and Noble will have exactly the same idea. Knows he needs to push now. Knows he needs to charge if he wants to not be leapfrogged in the pits. So let's see what happens.
So the round of pit stops pretty much completed. It's just Mark Richards who is yet to come in, but I think he'll be in fairly shortly. Noble in and amongst a little bit of traffic. He is able to dart around John McLeod.
Having a look at the SR3 race at the moment, so still Constantine now out in the lead. It's going to be interesting to see how he fares with Jack Lang. So Constantine really has made a lot of progress over the last few years. A big campaign in the UAE over the winter, and has come back to Europe with excellent speed. So he's had Ivan coaching him, so a lot of progress, and he's going to need that help now because he's going to have Jack Lang and a whole bunch of guys chasing him hard. So let's see how he hangs on.
The pit window is closed. Now that sector for Colin Noble was a 67.0 as opposed to the 66.4 from Philippe Payot in his outlap, although some of that is probably explained by the fact there's a whole heap more fuel in Colin Noble's SR8 and therefore the car that little bit heavier. So
yeah, a critical stage in the race now for Colin. He needs to have his head down. You know, he's had an impressive run so far this year in LMP3. You know, a real cut his teeth in radicals, learn from SR1. But there you go. Looks like the Monza Garage car has leapfrogged Noble as we thought could happen.
And Konstantin Gurkaev has come out ahead of them all. So the order is Oliver Barker leads from Steve Burgess in second, and then it's going to be Jacques Viard in third place, Konstantin Gurkaev in fourth, Jack Lang in fifth, and this is the impact of the success seconds all cycling themselves through. Yeah,
absolutely. So you can see there Noble really on a charge, setting the fastest first speed trap just over the 260 kilometre mark. So really getting that V8 on the cam now, and his best first sector for that car of the race. So a 40.1 second first sector. So you can see the car looking excellent coming down into there, really starting to hunker down to the ground. Noble exploiting everything he can from it.
Well, it's quite an exciting exam question, this Colin Noble, because he's 23.9 seconds off the lead. We've got 23 minutes left on the clock, and he's also 10 seconds off this man, Jacques Viard, in the lead of the Masters class. So whether or not Viard can reel in Steve Burgess and Oliver Barker, he's 13 seconds adrift of the race lead here, Jacques Viard, and Oliver Barker 2.6 seconds up from Steve Burgess. So this is going to be absolutely fascinating, and for Oliver Barker this could work out very nicely. He pitched in early, got himself out of that scrap with Jack Lang, didn't have any success seconds in the pits after his adventures yesterday, and he's used it to undercut the whole field.
Absolutely, and you can see Noble charging now, really trying to get through these SR3s. He knows the SR8 that he needs to find is up the road from him at the moment. But again, VR doing a good job. You know, a lot less experienced than Noble. You know, Noble is one of the hot campaigners at the moment in the prototype scene. So he should catch VR. We would expect him to, but it's not done yet.
Already scything past Jack Lang. Colin Noble, I think, was the inaugural SR1 Cup champion, wasn't he? Had a very successful season.
Absolutely, a lot of radical experience, although this is the first time he's driven the SR8, adapting well to it. You know, the car is well developed now, and you can see looking at it is a great looking car.
It really is, and also just the performance it's offering to Noble. Whatever he's asking in the car, it seems to be giving it to him at the moment. Now, he gained a second on the race leader, Oliver Barker, on that last lap, but he was in amongst traffic, so this is going to be, in fact, he gained more than that. He gained almost 4 seconds on Oliver Barker over that last lap. So Colin Noble, race victory is what he's in pursuit of. 2.5 minutes lap. There is Jacques Viard. He's reeled in what was a 10-second advantage. He's got it down to 4 seconds in the space of a lap.
Yeah, as I said, a lot more experience in that number 3 car there at the moment. You wouldn't expect Jacques Viard to have that sort of pace. Colin is a out-and-out professional, making his living doing this. So he's doing a good job. You can see using every piece of road there. So, and again, just the car really on the move at the moment.
As he chases Jacques Viard, he will potentially dispatch Viard during this middle sector on this lap, all the while keeping an eye on the Barker and Burgess battle at the front of the field. That is swinging pretty decisively in favour of Oliver Barker, who's 2 seconds quicker than Steve Burgess last time around. Then it's going to be the rate of catch from Colin Noble, who swoops right up into pursuit of Jacques Viard through Pouhon and might even make the move into Fagnes, launches to the inside. Viard sees him, doesn't shut the door, and that's nicely done.
Yeah, good driving from these guys. I think Viard knew he was definitely the faster car. It's given him the space, but now hopefully it will chase, and yeah, good to see these guys having a good race today.
It's Colin Noble as he comes to the end of this middle sector. What's the deficit to Barker? It's 20.3 seconds. So he is currently chasing Barker down at a rate of a second a minute, exactly on schedule with the number of minutes left on the clock. So this is going to be very good fun, I suspect.
Yeah, this is going to be a close one. So the guys really having to the equalisation working really well in the pit stop penalties here. So let's see how Colin gets on. We know his qualifying lap was sub 220, so certainly much more in the locker with that SR8 as you would expect with the horsepower. But he's got some ground to make, so he's got his work cut out for him. Here
is the overall race leader, Oliver Barker. So the Supersport podium as it currently stands is Barker from Burgess and then Jack Lang. And for Barker, if he gets passed by Colin Noble between now and the flag, it's not the end of the world in that he's still going to win the Radical Challenge Championship component of the race and therefore score maximum points. But you also still want to win a race outright at Spa, and so can't see Barker backing off. There is his rival, Steve Burgess, and Burgess, having stuck with Barker early on, is just slipping back, and then somewhere in the background, I think was possibly Colin Noble homing into view.
Interesting battle behind these guys. So Burgess still just chasing Barker. Got to keep his head down, using all the circuit, car bottoming slightly as he came out of there. But it just shows how hard he's charging after 42 minutes of racing. There's still no let up, absolutely flat out.
And the track now completely dried out as well, which is making things a little bit more straightforward for them all.
Yeah, I think that takes an element of the complexity out. These guys just chasing for every tenth they can at the moment, and looking between Barker and Burgess. Barker's still the faster car at the moment, so Burgess does need to be careful of that AstroTurf though. Whilst it all looks dry on the track and on the curbs now, the Astro will hold the water, and touching that will add to his excitement. Yeah,
the AstroTurf in the Exeter Pouhon has rescheduled or scheduled premature appointments with bank managers on more than one occasion in recent times. And yeah, Steve Burgess is living a little bit dangerously at the moment.
And really pushing, you know, interestingly in that middle sector, a 66 second flat middle sector compares to 66.4 from Barker. So really he hasn't given up on this. This is still on the cards for Steve. He wants the race win. He wants the points for the championship. So carrying the number 1 from last year, is the defending champion. So knows his way around a Radical. Very fast campaigner.
And as you well know, Alex, part of the risk as a driver is actually if you're in a safe position, if you back off, that's when you start to lose concentration, and that's when actually the race-ending mistakes can creep in.
Absolutely, you know, it's easier as a driver to push. The moment you start giving yourself some safety margin, you're not doing what you do as a driver, which is to extract all the performance you can. So it is easier to make mistakes at that point. Ultimately, Steve is in a position where he can cruise, so he needs to push.
That looks like Elliot Goodman, unfortunately, and it is, and that's on the Kemmel Straight. The car has come to a halt. You might want to turn off the lights, Elliot, lest you drain the battery, as the race leader, Oliver Barker, heads past. I hope he passed a green flag there before completing the lappery on Tom Harvey. Very hard to see from that camera angle as well, but he
let's hope
on
so.
his way.
You wouldn't want a technicality like that. Obviously, safety is critical with these things, but we want to see the winner decided for the fastest driver, not for a flag infringement. So let's hope he did.
We also just had a wave yellow flag up at the source. Not quite sure who the miscreant was there, but for Barker, 6 seconds, the gap that he is maintaining over Steve Burgess. Barker very quick through the first and third sectors, Burgess a little bit quicker through the middle sector, and all the while Colin Noble is now scything into Barker's advantage. He's halved it in the space of the last couple of laps, as you would expect really from an SR8.
Absolutely, no doubt which is the faster car. Both of these guys driving really on the edge of what these cars can do, but the V8 should be quicker, but obviously with a longer pit stop it still makes it tight. And we remember from yesterday that the last lap of the race had the podium finishers all in the same frame, so looking close again today.
Tom Harvey unfortunately has got a stop and go penalty because he passed the pit window closed board, and so pitted a lap, whereas Brian Harvey was at the wheel of the car, who stayed another lap, and as a result has led to a drive-through penalty.
I think again we're seeing between Barker and Burgess here, it looks like Barker did opt for the full dry setup. Burgess with the with a conservative, maybe sort of semi-wet setup on slick tyres, because every lap Burgess quicker in the middle sector, which features more corners than the first and third sector. So really a bit of a challenge for Burgess there, and he'll be looking to change that for race 3.
But it's really difficult to decide which way to go, because the full dry setup now with 50 minutes to go, the sun's out, looks absolutely vindicated. At the point that the cars were getting ready for the race, it was hammering it down with rain, and there were lots of black clouds over the circuit. So at that point, a compromise setup looked like a very, very good idea.
Absolutely, as with anything, especially in motorsport, hindsight is fantastic. The guys sat with me and the Clarks in a briefing only 90 minutes ago, where we even discussed is it viable to start the race at all. So there was so much rain, and the ambient is so hot here, 28 degrees, 27 degrees right now, that you can see the track dry. But Burgess again using every inch of road.
That's why it's been so good to see so many of the spectators preemptively hydrating this morning, and again through yesterday afternoon, as Steve Burgess in third place. He's now been passed by Colin Noble. Noble, I would imagine, is going to be past Oliver Barker before too long, but for Steve Burgess, he has got an 18-second advantage over Jack Lang in third place in the Supersport class. So after Lang's success yesterday, this is a chance for Burgess to get the point swinging back into his favour, at least in this race.
Yeah, definitely. And looking at Burgess's car, he really is having to push through this middle sector. Even with a bit more aero, the rear of the car is alive, so it's him using a lot of the exit curbs. Again there, the rear starting to rotate. The car quite on edge. He's obviously gone for a setup that gives him a lot of turn in, even with the confidence now to run up onto the Astro there.
What a tiniest of taps there. And that was Mark Richards in pursuit of John McLeod.
Yeah, correct. It looks like a little bit of bodywork flapping on the exit of on the back of McLeod's car, but a good catch there from Mark Richards. A fantastic race from him yesterday, finding his way up into fourth place. So Ferguson now looking down the inside of some SR3s. Trying to see the progress he's made through the grid, up to 10th now. So a really good race from those guys. Obviously a tricky start for them with the tyre choice. So coming through well though.
We've not seen anything of him, but we should give him a mention, is that Ryan Booth is currently the second quickest driver in the race by quite a margin. He's lapping in the low 2-minute 22 bracket. Colin Noble who has now taken the lead of the race, lapping in the 2:21. So Noble, perhaps inevitably, taking full advantage. He moves clear to lead the race overall. Oliver Barker remains the leader of the Supersport class and on course for a full set of points in the Radical Challenge. But they're going to get in amongst a little bit of traffic. It's Barry Liversidge and then Jack Manchester, both of whom are actually running on separate laps, I think, who they're about to close onto.
It looks like it. Barry chasing there behind Jack Manchester. So one of our younger drivers with one of our more experienced campaigners there in Barry. So, but chasing hard, looks like he's doing well. So let's hope he's going well. He's again one of our SR1 graduates, getting there. You know, lots of radical experience, but not sure how many laps he's had at Spa. But I'm sure they're getting faster each time.
I'm sure he's enjoying himself immensely as well as Noble picks his way past. Barker's advantage over Burgess now out to 7.5 seconds, but it's lovely to see these cars just almost breaking traction with the rear of them, and in a slicks and wings car such as these SR3s, that, if you're at the wheel of the car, feels like a very, very big moment, because you are just on that cusp of where the aerodynamic grip is about to cry enough.
Absolutely, and that is the game with these cars. You know, if it feels secure, it's probably not quick enough, so it needs to be on the edge of adhesion, and you see Barker and Burgess both doing that fantastically well. Interestingly, Oliver Barker he must have a really low wing setting, because doing his fastest speed trap of the race at 231, the only SR3 that I've seen above 230 kilometers an hour in the speed trap. So clearly got the setup right there, driving well, and looking to close this out. 10 minutes to go for him.
It's the strangest experience driving a slicks and wings car. I strongly recommend you ever get a chance to do it, because you almost have to check your brain at the door, because you'll just turn to a corner, you don't have to think, and the car will just give you the grip.
Absolutely. For these for new guys to radicals, it's a strange experience where you say if you go at this corner faster, you will feel more secure. Obviously, there is a tipping point at one point, but you need to trust the downforce and use that downforce, because corners that you think are going to be a brake and down 2 gears are actually flat out. So really, the SR3 is a well-developed package, really reliable little car now, and ultimately offering a fantastic experience for amateur drivers and pros alike.
Now, we've got a time penalty for car 11, Aaron Bailey, but also car 1, this man, Steve Burgess, for exceeding the track limits, and that is a real pity for Steve. Now, we don't know the extent of that time penalty, but he has got a 23-second advantage over Jack Lang, so it might be that he's going to be okay still for that second place. Yeah,
it will be interesting to see what the clerks decide is the right penalty there. So we've commented about how hard he's pushing and how much circuit he's been using. You can see again, I mean, that was fine on the regulations. He had 2 wheels inside the track. They've obviously spotted and had marshal's reports saying that there's been other excessive uses. A bit of oversteer there into the hairpin. As we mentioned, the rear of the car really looking quite alive on Steve's car. So he'll probably be looking to make some setup changes for the next race.
So should just explain the distinction. For UK regs, it's 2 wheels over the white line. That's okay, I think.
For UK regs, the guys are allowed to use all of the painted curbs. So as what you see there in red and yellow, they can have 2 wheels up to that edge, but no more. In European regs, those wheels can pass the painted surface as long as there are 2 wheels remaining on the tarmac surface. So you must have 2 wheels inside the white line of the circuit at all times.
That's right, yeah. And we've seen a couple of occasions 4 wheels going over the white line, which is where you start to potentially catch Brian Poulter's eagle eye up in race control.
Absolutely, it's a hard job to police, but one that has to be done to keep the racing fair. You need to make sure that no one's gaining an advantage by being able to carry more speed than someone else who's staying within the bounds of the circuit.
Just really as a general reflection on the way that this is, you know, we've seen in motorsport across Europe in the past 3 or 4 years, track limits being really heavily enforced after a few seasons where, you know, the way to make money out of motorsport was to own an AstroTurf company, such to the extent cars were running wide. But after a few years of really consistent policing, it has fed back into the driving standards, had no adverse effect on the racing whatsoever.
Yeah, I think it's something that all the drivers know about now. It's not a surprise to anyone when they talk about track limits, and as long as you know which regulations you're driving to, you can drive accordingly. And I think the tricky distinction for the clerks is to understand when someone runs off, did they run off because they were trying to seek to gain an advantage, or did they run off because they had a moment, that the car started to oversteer and all they could do was let go of the lock and let the car run wide. So that's a difficult one to police. So it's not easy for the drivers, it's not easy for the clerks, but it's a rule that has to exist and does have to be enforced.
There is Jack Lang, 5th in the race overall, 3rd in the Super Sport class, and with now a 30-second advantage over Konstantin Gurkaev. So he's not under particular threat here at the moment, Jack Lang, but for the first race of the weekend, really solid for him, on course for 2 podiums.
Absolutely, he'll just be wanting to close this out. A good result yesterday with a 2nd place. Today, 3rd on circuit right now, but who knows what's going to happen with this Burgess penalty. It looks like there's a battle teeing up there behind with Mark Crader and Dragos. So
wonder if that's Ryan Booth picking his way past both of them.
Potentially,
I think that's
maybe
exactly what it is. Ryan Booth is flying. He's just on the fastest first sector of anybody in the race so far.
Yeah, really charging. Really good statement. The Valor Performance team running that car obviously really worked hard on setup. Looks like he's doing his fastest laps towards the end of the race, which is pretty impressive. 266 kilometres through the first speed trap, so absolutely flying that car at the moment, and a 39-second first sector. So Ryan, our American driver, over for this round, gaining experience, learning Spa, but showing he's got every bit of speed to match Noble if they have a head-to-head later.
Yeah, and that's going to be lovely to watch later on, because Ryan won't have success seconds because he's currently looking like he's going to finish off the Masters class podium.
Yeah, I mean, Ryan and Jim have taken delivery of their new SR8 this weekend. They've had a few teething issues as they got up to speed, but they deserve a great result. They're a great pairing, really good ambassadors for the Radical brand. They race in the US Series and the European Masters, and really good guys.
So with Jacques Villar now in 4th position, he is pretty solidly set for 2nd place in the Masters class. Runs a little bit offline into the bus stop chicane, and he heads into, I think, the anti-penultimate lap of the race. Here is the race leader, Colin Noble, and would go into the last lap if there is less than 2 minutes 20 left on the clock.
And exactly what we were chatting about earlier. You see Colin throwing his best lap of the race on that last lap, so he knows he's leading, but he just wants to keep charging. He's doing everything he can to learn about the car, he wants to take feedback back to the team. He'll say towards the end of the race, maybe the car started to understeer and oversteer. He'll be looking to squeeze every 1/10 of a second he can out of this, but fantastic year for him so far, really dominating some of the LMP3 racing he's been doing, and just showing that the front of the LMP3 championship is the same as the front of this. Good is good, and he deserves the success he's getting.
And for Colin Noble as well, it's just very useful data to go back to the factory as well. This is how the car starts to behave on low fuel at the end of a race. This is what it does to the tyres, and so on and so forth.
Absolutely. That SR8 he's in is in its infancy. That was conceived in Peterborough at the tail end of last year. A lot of hard work has gone in there, and they've produced a stunning looking car. So, and you can see the first examples racing here. So more will be going globally over the next few weeks. So this is great data for him to take back to the team, to the works team that are running him. And looking at that car, the Nielsen car, again another one of the frontline teams in Radical Motorsport. They'll be really happy. David Thompson, or affectionately known as Sven, runs that team. Top line professional team. That car has looked excellent all weekend, and extremely fast. So just 2.5 minutes to go. That's all it needs to do.
Oh, that's a little bit too close as Barry Liversedge rotates, I think, whilst being lapped by John Carswell, trying to maybe do an Eddie Irvine and unlap himself into Fania.
That was an optimistic move, but showed that Barry is absolutely trying for every bit of track space he can, and a good recovery. I'm going to give him 10 for style for the recovery there. Just straight going again, and excellent stuff. So
the time penalty for Steve Burgess will be applied after the race, so we'll find out what it is then. As 2 minutes left on the clock, we're into the penultimate lap of proceedings, and for Colin Noble, he broke his run of fastest laps on the last lap. He was half a second off his best, but he was into the traffic a little bit. Andrew Ferguson has moved up to 6th overall now, having passed Konstantin Gudkaev, and Gudkaev actually has got Brian Caldwell reeling him in for 4th place in the Supersport class. So that is a battle that might come together in the latter stages.
What is shaping up nicely for later is this Noble and Booth battle. Their fastest laps now in this race, just 3/10 apart over 2.5 minutes of lap. So these guys really looking to duke it out later, and let's hope we get to see that.
And we've not really seen much of Ryan Booth, so we can't ascertain how much of his race has been in traffic. The assumption is probably quite a lot of it, and so with some clear air and a yardstick to run against, that promises to be a wonderful battle. We, of course, have the 3rd and final race of the weekend coming up later on this afternoon. Our coverage starts around about 3:45 Central European time. And then the 4th race of the weekend, back to the various cross-channel ports, starts at around about 5 o'clock Central European time.
Noble, one more run through Blanchimont there, absolutely flat out, 165 miles an hour on the apex, hard brake for the bus stop chicane. So really looking quite inch perfect at the moment. So driven a really solid race here, you know, helped by a great stint from Harrison at the start. So just one more lap to go, and hopefully he can bring it home, and they can enjoy the result they would have hoped for yesterday.
And what's really interesting as well, just looking at Colin Noble's posture in the car, there's a lot for others to learn about just a single turn of the wheel through the source, minimal correction, the head just looking down the track at the road in front of him, and making it look very easy, getting the car to do all the hard work. Of course it's not straightforward, of course he's driving at the limit, but he just looks so relaxed and assured whilst doing it. Yeah,
for sure, he's at the top of his game at the moment, and the guy's driving really well. A really lovely run through Rouge there, and interesting to see on the speed track what we see as he comes through it. He's certainly charging right now.
It is 261 kilometres per hour,
and interestingly the fastest first sector of the race, so really going for a Vettel style fastest lap on the last lap, but again just demonstrating how good the product is at the moment. You know, this is an hour-long race. First 8 minutes we know we're under safety car, but he's still able to push on and do these lap times towards the end. So testament to the guys at Radical, testament to the technical team, testament to Dunlop and all the product that is on that car. It really is performing well.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing a full grid of these in the very near future. Promises to be a really fantastic car and a worthy success to the original SRA.
Absolutely, just a thoroughbred now, and in a generation where there's a lot of turbo cars coming, this is a real classic. You know, 2.7 litre V8 engine, revving at 10,500 RPM, gives a unique sound reminiscent of the Formula One from the 70s and 80s.
Well, ultimately, it's a car that's designed to give the maximum performance and driving pleasure, rather than necessarily conforming where the winds of regulations in other series are going, and therefore gives it a fantastic performance for great value to the driver. And now Colin Noble is just a couple of corners from the checkered flag and victory in race 2 here at Spa. He's got to navigate back markers first of all, or not back markers, but just some of the SR3s. It's Adrian Watt who is the first of those who moves aside.
Keeps it nice and tidy, just needs to make one more turn here and try not to get into trouble.
And he does that with no drama. The checker flag goes out. Colin Noble and John Harrison victorious in the second of the weekend's Radical Challenge races here in Spa. We will have a little bit of a wait as the P1 pit board has returned to its place before Oliver Barker arrives into view, and Barker is going to be second overall and Supersport winner. Really impressive drive from Barker, particularly with what unfolds as the race went on as a full dry setup on a very damp track in the early stages.
Yeah, absolutely, and that was a textbook Spa race, to be honest. So compromised conditions at the start, sunny and dry. You would never have known there'd been rain today if you looked at it now. So no, that was a good performance from the guys. It would have been very easy for all these guys to get overexcited at the start and have a little bit of excitement, but no, that was good stuff.
Yeah, we have a level of anxiety about what the weather is going to do later on this afternoon. But for Colin Noble and John Harrison, they've taken the win. Oliver Barker in second, Steve Burgess in third, Jacques Viard and Philippe Payot in fourth, and Jack Lang to fifth place to complete the Supersport podium behind Barker and Burgess. So let's take a look back at the best of the race. And of course, we started behind the safety car for 2 laps, and when we got going, it was all a little bit damp. It meant that John Harrison got swamped by a horde of SR3s as they arrived into La Source for the first time. We did get going. Dominic Jackson, Steve Burgess and Oliver Barker were dicing tooth and nail. Ivan Lukasevich was moving to the front of the Supersport class. A stop behind the safety car for Jeremy Ferguson to switch to slicks proved valid, as that car eventually finished in 6th place. Post pit stops, Colin Noble was absolutely flying, carving his way through the Supersport class runners en route to a fairly decisive advantage at the front of the field. This was the move on Jacques Viard that gave him the lead and ultimately victory in the Masters class as well, with Viard eventually coming home in 4th place. This is the pass that gave Colin Noble the lead on Oliver Barker, but Barker driving supremely well to claim an excellent 2nd position, as others tried a little bit too hard. Barry Liversidge having a quick spin, an even quicker recovery late on. So it's victory for Colin Noble and John Harrison, 2nd place in Supersport honours for Oliver Barker and Steve Burgess, rounding out the rostrum as the race finished under glorious sunshine. So look then at the final classification. Noble and Harrison taking the win. Barker in 2nd, Burgess in 3rd, Payot and Jacques Viard in 4th, from Jack Lang in 5th. The Fergusons in 6th, ahead of Konstantin Kukayev. From Lukasevich, Brian Cordwell in 8th, Shahin Nouri 9th, Mark Richards in 10th place. We will be back at about 3:45 Central European time this afternoon for the 3rd and final Radical Challenge race from Spa-Francorchamps. So until then, from Alex Mortimer and Ben Evans, it's goodbye from Belgium.
Thank you.